Hi everyone, my name's Paula Lancaster. I'm the Assistant General Manager here at ENVIROTech Education. Grab yourselves a cuppa. We're going to have a wonderful chat this afternoon with David and Roberta. We're launching our Plastic Free July, one of our ENVIROLIVE episodes. We're looking today at connecting sustainability and marine conservation. Roberta and David will discuss the shocking state of plastics and microplastics in the marine food chain and the challenges in Australia to reduce this plastic waste entering our waterways and ocean. They're also going to talk to you about circular economy. I'd like to introduce our presenters. I have David here, Mr. David Lennon. He has 30 years experience as an environmental consultant. He has directed 4 artificial reef startups, just to mention some minor stuff he's done. His career has spanned the globe. He has his Bachelor of Science in Oceanographic Technology and a Master's of Science in Environmental Management. We're very pleased to have David Lennon here at ENVIROTech as our lead marine trainer. We also have the wonderful Roberta. Roberta is a sustainability and environmental consultant. She has also worked extensively overseas. What particularly interests Roberta are the human activities which affect the environment and finding ways to be able to reduce these impacts. Roberta also has a Bachelor of Science in Oceanography and a Master's of Science in Ecology and a Doctorate of Philosophy in Coexistence System Science. Roberta is also one of our lead trainers, our lead trainer for Diploma of Sustainability Operations and ENVIROTech Education, and we're very honoured to have her work with us. I'd now like to pass over to David and Roberta with this very exciting topic.
Yeah, and it's quite a depressing topic, Paula, something that I've become increasingly passionate about because in my career I've studied a lot of impacts. I don't know whether that's good or bad. But a lot of impacts recover. So whether it's dredging, I've been involved in major oil spills, for example, they tend to clean up. Nature returns back to what it was doing, tends to have ability to recover. What's really scaring me about plastics is they're not going away and they're not going to go away. They are there literally basically forever. And we're adding more of them. You know, there's over 100 million different types of marine life killed each year, 100,000 turtles killed each year. We're generating just an increasing amount, 300 or 400 million tons of plastic is being generated each year, and only a small percent of that is being recycled. There's up to, you know, about 500 trillion pieces of plastic in the sea, and by 2050 we're going to have more pieces of plastic in the ocean than fish. That's pretty scary.
And is the plastic in the ocean, is that through people like littering, through people throwing it in the oceans?
Well, there's definitely that happens. There's many countries where out of sight, out of mind, and a lot of the plastic is swept into the rivers take it away, and that's their disposal method. And of course there's about 10 major rivers polluting the oceans with plastic. If it's blown in, you know, we don't put it in bins. It gets blown into the ocean or into the river and then carried into the ocean. But the other scary thing is what we call microplastics. So it isn't just about all the big stuff that's floating around that we can see and we see on the beach. It's about these tiny little pieces. So anything smaller than 5 mil. And what's scary is the plastics break down into even smaller pieces, and then they're taken up into the food chain. So they're eaten, they go into the digestive system, and you can imagine you get even tinier particles can actually make it into the flesh, and then we're eating that. Particularly filter feeders like oysters. We're eating oysters, we're taking up plastic. Apparently all of us have got plastic in us now. And a third of the microplastics in the ocean are from our laundry. So, I was shocked to find this out because
I don't wash plastic in my washing machine.
I know, exactly, and that's what blew me away. But of course, it's all our synthetic clothes that we've got these days. We don't buy natural fibers like we used to. So we got all these synthetic clothes, and there's hundreds of thousands of fibers entering our laundry from each wash. That gets flushed down into the sewer. The sewage treatment plants don't take out those little tiny plastic bits. Those little tiny fibers. No, they don't filter down to that sort of level. And you know, when you see the water that comes out of a tertiary treated plant, it's quite clear, you know, and some of them, you know, it looks clear. You don't see those microscopic particles. So it's really scary. And it's not going away, and it's only getting worse. And that's where it was great to talk to Roberta, because I wanted to understand is what's going on, you know, what do we do? And why is it so hard to recycle plastic and do something about it?
This is a big problem that appears since the late 80s and 90s, because if you consider over 90% of all plastic out there was produced after the mid 1990s. Before there, we were not using that much plastic. It was still expensive. But when the cost of production of plastic went down, it became an everyday thing. It became disposable. Like if you remember, my grandmother, when you had a plastic pot from an ice cream, she would save it and put food inside and have a second life, because it was something that it still had a cost, it still had a price. But when it became too cheap to the point that we can just buy a bottle of water, that sometimes is, I'm not kidding, most of the price of the bottle is the plastic itself, and it's still cheaper than many of the other options you have there. And you just throw away, you just drink it, throw away, it becomes a problem. The issue is that plastic is too cheap. And it's the problem also is that it actually solved lots of problems at the same time. If you imagine medical activities, for example, syringes and all the PPE that you use in the hospital, imagine without all that plastic, how much risk of contamination we would have. It actually solved lots of things. It also made food cheaper and more available for people in lower incomes and in poor parts of the planet. But at the same time, I would say we are too entitled to have commodity. We think that it's easy. We want to live easy. So if you buy something packed in plastic and that is pre-done, or like pre-washed salad that comes in a plastic bag, or you are going to just, instead of taking my own bottle, take a bottle of water, drink and throw away, you're just getting more problem. You're just adding up to the problem.
What about the fact that I collect all my bottles and I go down and recycle them? You know, they give you the money back because you've recycled it. Is that a good thing?
It's a good thing, but we're still really far from making it work properly. The issue is that in Australia, we have a lot of segregation companies. So we have the companies where the council send all the yellow lead bin, and they separate. And it's a mechanic separation. That is not the most efficient. So for example, if you get a bottle of water, a bottle of Coke, it's going to have at least 3 kinds of plastics there. And the 3 together, they cannot be recycled. We need to separate.
So when I put it to be recycled, it's not actually getting recycled?
It's getting recycled. But what happens is that after they separate, they need to send someone to separate more. And then the cost of recycling goes higher. And to compete with the raw material, the new plastic, it becomes really high. It's really difficult because the new plastic is so cheap. Then with all this process to actually prepare the used plastic to be recycled makes it too expensive. And at the moment, we changed the legislation in Australia in a moment of changing. It was a little bit delayed by COVID, but until a few years ago, up to 98% of all plastic, recyclable plastic from Australia was sent to China to be recycled over there.
What?
But, yeah. And,
that's unbelievable.
And what was happening is because the level of contamination was so high and China was losing a lot of money with this separation, they decided to don't take it anymore. And this is not Australia. It was United States, Great Britain, most of the European countries were doing the same. They're sending the plastic to be recycled in developing countries and countries that the workforce was cheaper. So China forbid it. Now they passed a legislation that if you have more than 0.05% of contamination, they don't take it. Our average level of contamination is 30%.
So when you say contamination, do you mean food in it?
Not only food, but contamination of different materials. So many of the packages that we use, they are made of multiple kinds of materials. And when we recycle, we need to separate all of them. We cannot melt all at once. No, we have different kinds of plastic. You know the arrows that we have on the bottom of a package, and they have numbers? So these numbers and the arrows, they say the kind of plastic it is. And you need to put them separately in different places so they can actually be melted with their own brothers and sisters, like all the same kind of plastic. And this is the hardest part. Yeah. I lived in Japan. I did my PhD in Japan, and was impressed that I had to segregate 9 categories of recyclables in my house every week, included 4 different kinds of plastics.
So how do you know what the different plastic is? How do you know?
It's actually all written. And there was something that was really amazing and that I struggled a lot in the beginning, because as soon as I moved to the Japanese town, they sent me to the tsunami drill training in the council, and then to the waste training. But I couldn't speak any Japanese at the time, and I did not understand anything. So in my first few months, I did everything wrong because I couldn't read in Japanese either. So as I've learned the language and I learned how to do it, so like, oh yeah, this is amazing, because this way you actually increase the value of the materials to be recycled. And not only plastic, like glass is the same issue. And
Roberta, so I'll just interrupt you for a moment, because we've got a few questions coming in.
Sure.
And then of course we'll head back. So I can see Joanne here has said, so should we mandate for cotton, natural fiber, linen in the hospitality accommodation industry and school uniforms?
Joanne, it's a big problem with that, because we need to also consider scaling of the whole system. The truth is, if we're going to get the organic fibers, we're also going to need more space to produce more, to produce on the scales that we need for all schools and all accommodations. And the cost was going to be higher. And also, there is an environmental cost for that also. Yeah? Everything, it's demands a space, demands deforestation to produce more. And also, it's going to need more water, for example, depending on which kind of fiber you're using. And that can create another problem. The truth is, plastic that is not single use, that you're going to keep for a long time, it's not that big problem. We need to be more conscious about how we use it, okay? About the microfibers, it's important to have filters. I have the same kind of filters that are in my laundry machine that I use to filter zooplankton on my samples. My research passion, it's zooplankton ecology. And
that's
so
interesting to say that, because Jamie has just asked. She says, yes, not surprising about the microplastics coming from the laundry, but what solutions do you recommend to reduce that?
Yeah, so it's really important to have the filters. Many of the new machines, they already comes with really good filters. Yeah, we need to remember to clean them, and we take all that fibers, and actually they are not recyclable. They need to go to landfill. I do measure my fibers production at home. And my biggest amount of fibers is not from my laundry. It's from the carpets. It's absurd, the amount of fibers that I take out from the carpets every week on my vacuum cleaner. And this is another thing. Another thing that contributes a lot for microplastics in the ocean is the tires. Yeah? Every time that you leave a slick mark on the floor, like from breaking or something, these are microplastic. They're staying there on the ground, and then when it rains, they will wash to the ocean. Actually, you can actually see it at the beach after strong rain. You're going to see on the sides of the storm water the dark lines, and these are majority microplastics. from the tires. There are really cool developments now. For example, there is a startup that developed a machine that you put on the back of your tire and you collect that, the ones that are thrown out. And it's really cool. And you can use that to make paint. Yeah. So there are solutions. We need to bring those solutions. And one of the solutions that we need is to actually improve our packagings. Make it easier to recycle and try to reduce, go back to the refilling as much as we can so we can reduce that use of single plastic. I know it's hard. I do my best to avoid buying things packed in plastic. And that's some things that I love, like coconut water. And I cannot find it without in a coconut like I would love to most of the time. I did cut things from my consumption just because of the packaging, to tell the truth. And we got to then better how to deal with that. Yes,
I think things are changing, because you were telling me that they're reducing the different types of plastic in a Coke bottle, for example. I think, or you mentioned it was a Gatorade bottle or a Powerade bottle.
Yeah. So for example, a Gatorade bottle, the bottles that they have multiple, the ones that pop up, they normally have about 4 different kinds of plastics there. And a couple of years ago, CocaCola opened a competition between universities to develop the same kind of bottle with just one kind of plastic. And who won was actually a TAFE in New South Wales, what was really interesting. And they developed a Powerade bottle with just one kind of plastic. So you just need to squish and put for recycling. Yeah, what is a great solution. But
so why do they use more than one? Like, why in the first place did they use more than one?
Is there the different characteristics of the plastic? Yeah, one, it's better for expansion, for example, the PTE. So if you get something like this was given for me recently. It's a this side is the alcohol gel, like a hand sanitizer bottle. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's really hard. There's a lot of plastic in this little bottle. The truth is, this comes from the same kind of, they come in like a cylinder. And if you get this one, that is what, 150 mils, 200 mils, they can expand to make a 2 liters bottle from the same amount of plastic. Yeah. And this is what happens. If you get a little bottle of Coke, that is tiny ones, they have the same amount of plastic of a 2 liters bottle of Coke. Yeah. So that's the characteristics, why they use PTE, and it's strong, it doesn't break. The harder the lids, normally because they are harder and they're going to click better and going to be easier to tied up and stay in place. That's what they use this one. And then we have the plastic, soft plastic they normally put around of the bottle with the label. And this is a completely different one. Yeah. And so you see, just in a simple bottle, you're going to have things really made difficult. It's the same issue for the coffee cups. The majority of the coffee cups, they are paper and a line of plastic inside. Yeah. That's why the coffee cups are not compostable, the majority of them. There's some new ones that are compostable, and they're not recyclable. Yeah.
You're kidding. What? With a paper?
No, they've got a lining inside, David.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. Plastic. That's there you go, thinking you're putting them in the recycling bin and doing the right thing.
No.
So not at all? You can't get any paper out of them?
It's so tricky. You know another tricky thing? The Tetra Pak boxes, that ones that you have sometimes almond milk, some brands of coconut water. They are paper, plastic, and aluminum foil.
Yeah.
They say there's a symbol, recycle. You can recycle. Yeah, but nobody recycles because it's so expensive to recycle that thing that there are almost no industries recycling it. You can upcycle. In some places, they're grounding it, mixturing it with some resins and making tiles and some construction materials. It's quite good for insulation. Yeah. So we need to find these solutions. But at the same time, the majority is not being designated for that, unfortunately.
So David, in your experience, with even like creating reefs and the things that you've been making with biodiversity enhancers, have you seen effects of plastic in that marine environment that disturb you?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've been involved in a lot of dive cleanups, So there's a lot of those happening around the country that people should look into. So quite regularly they're done, especially around piers where there's a lot of fishing line, a lot of nets. And then places like Asia, where there's a lot of plastic in the ocean, we find one of the things we've got to do is remove that plastic wrapped around coral. So we see a lot of coral with rope, nets, plastic baskets, a lot of the agricultural plastic bags, just
Does that
toothbrushes.
suffocate the coral?
Oh, yeah. And about 90% get infected once they've had plastic interacted with them, because what happens with the plastic, it's got a charge on it and it attracts pollutants. So pollutants can actually stick to the plastic. And then that goes into whoever eats it, but it also affects the corals as well. And then, anything that smothers them, stops them from being able to feed, is a major issue.
Yeah. And talking about that, like my research area of my PhD and everything is zooplankton, because you can see these little animals, microscopic animals in the ocean like this. And I'm not kidding. The majority of my samples, I always found microplastic together with it, and many times inside of them. We're talking
and they're tiny,
tiny copepods that this really microscopic things we cannot see them without a microscope, and I see plastic inside of them. Sometimes
I was talking to Steve from Jacob's Well, and he was telling me that they have some microplastic kits, and he's asked us to become part of. I believe, David, you can clarify this. I believe you pick a site that you go to like a few times a year, and you monitor whether it's increasing or decreasing, and then you can start ascertaining where it's coming from. Is that what it's for?
Yeah, so a lot of those studies are about trying to identify the source and then tracing it back to the source. So it might be an industrial site or whatever it might be. Yeah. So, and obviously monitoring change. And what they do is they take that data and they can lobby council to do something about it, or it goes into the big database for getting rid of single-use plastics. And Roberta, what's the latest in Australia for single use? Because I know some of the supermarkets are phasing them out in a year or something. Or
some states already passed for different kinds of single-use plastics legislation. They're going to banish it. Queensland was the last one. We also had South Australia. So these things are actually being put in place. But the truth is that they're still providing the thick plastic bags and other things. They don't sell specific ones, but the products are still being packed into plastic, and the problem is still there. What I strongly believe is that we need stronger legislation to help us with that. So, for example, recently, the state of Maine in the US, they just passed a legislation bringing up the extended producer responsibility. So what it is, let's say that I produce this alcohol gel here, this hand sanitizer. If I use a package like this, it's a really bad package for recycling and really bad for the amount of plastic, for the amount of product being used. I'm going to pay more taxes as a business. I'm responsible for that. And the idea is that improve your package and we reduce your taxes. This already happens in Europe. And it's still quite weak because the tax is just too low. We need to get it harder, And another thing that makes it more feasible is if we, consumers, start to push the companies. Check the package of the company they're using. If they're using something that is not recyclable, it's harder, or don't have the logo, because here in Australia, unfortunately, the legislation do not oblige the companies to put the logo for recycling. It's not mandatory. They do if they want. If they're not feeling that, if they don't have a package convenience, like a system to collect their package back, to be responsible for that, we should not buy from that companies.
So Roberta, I noted when we were starting, we talked about circular economy, and I'm sure that not everyone understands what that means. So given the time, can we touch on circular economy now?
Sure. I actually have been talking about circular economy this whole time. I just forgot to say that this is circular economy. The truth is, we live in a society of take, and dispose. We need to stop that. Two main reasons. First one, we are trashing the planet because we are disposing a lot of waste and with no use. Second, the resources are finite, they end. So it also makes economic sense because there is a point that we're not going to be able to take resources to make the products anymore. So we need to create a circular economy where everything that is produced comes back to the system. Instead of getting to the end of life, ending up in the trash and never being used again, no, it always comes back to the production line. However, it must start in the companies because they need to design the products, they need to design the packagings in a way that this is going to be easier. At the moment, what's happening is that the majority of the products are too hard to be recycled. And the cost of recycling becomes so high that the councils that actually collecting that waste, they cannot deal with that. It becomes a big social problem too. So,
and I think this is the reason ENVIROTECH education, like we've been approaching businesses and councils promoting our course because, when I first started ENVIROTECH, I had no idea. I thought your course was about trees, so I had no idea about the extent of sustainability. And so by us getting people, even if it's one person per business who's educated, they can start making more conscious decisions.
Yes,
and in terms of the marine course, David, I've found that just even my knowledge with listening to you guys talk has increased so much that I'm much more conscious about the marine habitats and not harming them.
Yeah. That's right.
So education, what would you guys say? I've had a few people type in about education.
Yeah, education is fundamental. And the problem is that we are not seeing enough education on the systemic issues of sustainability. Most people, when I ask, what is your vision about sustainability? What is the first word that comes to your mind when I ask you about the sustainability? And they say, oh, it's being green, it's plants, and that. No, it's not just that. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about the triple bottom line. It's environmental protection, economic development, and social development. So it's people too. Because if people are not living in good conditions, they are also not going to care about the environment. However, at the same time, it creates another issue because if you give people more money, they're also going to consume more. So at the same time, we need to educate people and educate the business to show that it's unsustainable. We cannot sustain for long this business model where we take and dispose. We need to cycle.
Doesn't your doesn't the certificate for course and the diploma, doesn't it teach people how to actually audit a business in terms of?
We work the certificate for not so much. Certificate for is more about understanding and collecting the data in the business, but the diploma, it's more strategic level. So it's when you make the decision making of the company, you want to change the company from inside. So we actually learn a lot of how to understand the process of making whatever your business is doing and understand what are the points of the process that we are causing impact into the environment. And it's not only about plastic, but also energy, about emissions, about water, and everything else. And at the same time, take into consideration people, so we can produce in an efficient way with less waste. So
David, in relation to the certificate 3 in marine habitat conservation and restoration, and in relation to the topic we're discussing here today, how does the educational impact of that course help with this cause?
Yeah, well, a lot of what they learn how to do is monitoring. So actually documenting what's there. Obviously, luckily, our students are all passionate anyway, and so very, very motivated to do the right thing. But we cover strategies on reducing the amount of consumption of plastic as part of the course. And then when we're diving and we do our reef CPR, for example, we're actually getting involved in removing it and seeing it firsthand. And then there's the students learn how to present, give lectures, give talks at markets, to schools and things, and help out with the education side of things. We've had some interesting comments there about microplastic sampling. There's some good posts there. I've seen people talking about schools getting involved in microplastic monitoring. So that was good. That was good.
Yeah, it's really interesting looking at the people who are tapping in. Before we finish with talking about some key things that we can actually do, David, how about I give Roberta a last chance to say something, because I know I've interrupted you a couple of times, and then we'll cross to David to have his final words.
I would like to say a little thing about Jenny's side. She just said something really interesting about this pandemic is highlighted that we've been ruining the ecosystems. Though it seems like we are still creating band-aid solutions and not fixing the root causes of the issues. Yeah. Do you think it's actually being recognized that we are a bigger systemic shift that we need to happen? Exactly, James. This is what we need to do. And that's what we are moving with the circular economy. So whole countries are moving into changing circular economy. We still baby steps in Australia. They're not talking so much in Australia about changing the business itself. It's more like what to do with the end of life of products, but we need to bring that responsibility to the business too. They have more power, and they have.
Can I add, Jamie, that's exactly why Envirotech are pushing these courses. There aren't many people teaching environmental sustainability. We are the only ones teaching a qualification in relation to marine habitats, and we're lobbying the governments and different organisations all the time to be able to get these courses out. We want them to be in the schools so that the students can learn about it at that level, and then those that are interested can take it on as a career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you want me to say some tips for people? Yeah.
Yeah.
Little stats.
You can use, before you say your tips, because I think that's a good way to end. You can have your last word, David.
My last word? I got.
Well, you can have a few words.
Well, we've been talking about the nature that we're destroying, but nature's what we got to model. Nature recycles everything beautifully. And, one thing I am confident about, and working with students, they got some brilliant ideas. We've got the intelligence. We can develop the technology to do this and solve these problems, but we just need the incentive to do it. But my one tip would be, two tips: buy natural clothes as much as possible, but get a filter on your laundry. So there's Coral Ball, there's Guppy Bag. Just Google, and I've got a video on how to make one from the $2 shop. So I'll post that link somewhere. I made a video on using things you can buy in your $2 shop to make a laundry filter. So that's my tips.
Thanks, Roberta.
So I would like to call first to start my tips. I would just let you know, guys, that 80% of the impact from a person living in a developed country comes from what they consume. So from our personal impact on the environment, just 20% is from our everyday lives, the energy, the water, the things that we consume. You do, in our everyday lives. The rest, 80%, is the things that we buy. Cars, products from the supermarket, and soft drinks, so whatever you're buying. So be conscious about
What about a bottle of wine?
Huh?
What about a bottle
sorry,
of
Paula.
wine?
Also, every single thing we do, Paula, even organic food has an impact on the environment. It's less impact, but it still has. So we need to know what we are consuming and think about before buying something. Do we need it, or we are buying just because we want? We became this massive consumption society and buying dozens of things that we actually don't need. Yeah. So if we think twice before buying anything, think about your car. Don't buy a big car. Go for a smaller one. The impact of a big car is so much bigger than the small one. Do you really need the big one? Maybe if you're
If you have a big family,
yeah. So you need to think if you need or not. Try is before buying for want, buy for need. And
I actually saw an ad the other day. It was advertising Gumtree, and it was actually talking about recycling, like putting things on Gumtree so that someone else can take it and use it. And I thought, wow,
Yeah, actually, this is a lot of things part of the circular economy too. The circular economy incentivizes people a lot of buying secondhand, but there's a point on that's tricky. Many people got too used to sell back, and it's also pushing mass consumption. So, for example, here in Byron Bay, where I live, every Saturday I see dozens of young girls selling so much clothes on the sidewalks to buy more. And once I stop and ask one, and I'm like, this is all yours? It's yeah. And gosh, she was a probably 20 years old girl. I'm a 48 years old woman, and she had more clothes in that sidewalk than I had in my whole life. And I'm not kidding. And my mom worked with fashion. But anyway, the thing is that they were selling, and okay, it's going to the circular economy, but to buy more cheap, fast fashion. No, check the brand you're buying. How is it made? Was it made like it's too cheap? If it's too cheap, think twice, because probably the environmental conditions it was produced are not good, and probably someone was exploited to produce that. So avoid the really cheap things. Go for things with quality. More expensive, but you use less. You buy less.
Yes, I'll try to remember that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to just finish on, because, you know, we're 35 minutes in. I know that the comments that I've been seeing, people are really excited about these chats. And, you know, our thoughts are that we're going to continue with what we call ENVIROLIVE, you know, like our little Netflix. So it would be amazing if people wanted to post into us some topics that they'd like us to cover, because we have so many experts here. And we have access to so many more experts who can come and talk and you know, share these particular ideas. So I'd really like to thank you all for joining us. It's been an amazing discussion. And if you want to know more, you can check us out on our website, and you can connect with us through social media. And it is on social media that we will advertise these upcoming ENVIROLIVEs. And obviously, the more interest we have, the more ENVIROLIVEs that we can conduct. And if you would like to study with us, we'd be excited to hear from you. We can send you out packages with more information. It's really up to you. And I think that we can really change the world. And even though sometimes we say, oh, it's destroyed the ecosystem, it's doom and gloom, just from speaking to Roberta and David personally, I know that there are wonderful things that they are both doing, that and also through education, we can actually turn this around. We don't have to have destroyed ecosystems. We can fix them. We just need enough people to be educated to be able to do it. And we need an army of, what do we say, Dave? An army of sea gardeners, an army of ocean gardeners, so that we can really get in and help this marine habitat situation.
Yep, and at the same time, we also need to change the business so they stop destroying everything and causing climate change and everything else. Because nobody wants to live without the things we got used to. We just need to make.
So you can imagine, Roberta, you can imagine if we get these courses into the high schools and it's one of the subjects that they do, even if they don't go into environmental as a career, their knowledge is going to penetrate through businesses, through families, through homes. So it really is, in the saying of a lot of people today, it's about education.
Yeah, and also, like, for example, if you think Diploma of Sustainable Operations, it's not only about being a specialist in sustainability, but it's to implement in any kind of business, from a cafe to a coal miner, big industry. This is what I've been doing as environmental consultant for many years, is trying to understand how we can reduce the impact of each one of them. And
I know that a lot of people studying your course and a lot of people studying your course, David, they're not people who necessarily want a career. It's because they're passionate about the environment and because they want to make a difference. So I might end there because we could go on forever. So we'll end there on Let's Make a Difference, and we look forward to seeing you with ENVIROLIVE in our next episode. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Roberta.
Thank you all. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, David. And see you soon.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.